In this lecture, you will learn how to handle the user-defined exceptions and raise an exception explicitly. While programming a plsql block, sometimes you need to raise an exception based on your job. We know that exceptions are for terminating the block execution in runtime because of some unintentional or unwanted moves. So you may want to raise an exception by yourself, and this exception may not have an error number. How? For example, you may think that if a salary of an employee is greater than 20,000, raise an exception because I don't want anybody to get such a salary. Like that, there can be any reason for raising an exception. But these exceptions are not declared in the Oracle server, and there is no error code for these kind of things, because this is not an error for the Oracle server. This is an error only for your job routine. To do that, you specify a user-defined exception, then raise it explicitly wherever you need. You will understand better on an example. But first, let me show you how to define a user-defined exception. As you see, this same as non-predefined exceptions. We simply write our new exception name and the exception keyword. That's it. We don't assign any error number for our exception because we don't have any error number for that, since it is a logical error for our business. Once we declared our exception, we need to raise it explicitly because they are not known by the Oracle server, so they won't be raised by the database. We will do that. We need to raise it explicitly. To raise an exception, we write raise keyword and our exception name. Actually, we raise any type of exceptions with the raise statement. We can raise predefined, non-predefined, or user-defined exceptions with the raise statement. But in here, we will use it with our user-defined exceptions. So let's open up the SQL developer and make our examples. Declare. Now we will declare a user-defined exception. Let's say too high salary. It is an exception. And let's declare a variable for some fetch. Salary check. And it is a PLS integer, for example. And now our begin keyword. Now we will get the salary into our variable. We will select salary into salary check from employees where employee ID is equal to 100. Now I will check the salary. If it is greater than 20,000, I will raise my exception because it is too much for my company. So I write if salary check, let me copy that, is greater than 20,000, then raise too high salary. And our end if. Now in here we do our business. We do our business if the salary is under 20,000. This is a comment for us. And I will write a DBMS output. Let's say this salary is in an acceptable range. And our end keyword. Now, before handling the exception, let's run it to see what happens. As we can see, unhandled user-defined exception error message. So let's handle it. I come here and write exception when, and our exception name, when too high salary, then, now let's print something. This salary is too high. You need to decrease it. Now let's run it again. As we can see, this salary is too high. Means since this salary is greater than 20,000, I raised an exception and handled that in the exception section. I raised an exception because I don't want the rest of the code to run. But if the salary is lower than 20,000, let me change the employee ID and run it. We did not raise this time. Great. I said that we can raise any type of exceptions explicitly. So for instance, now let's raise an invalid number exception. We know that it's a predefined exception. But let's change our employee ID back to 100 first. An invalid number. Raise invalid number. Let's run it again. As we can see, even if there is not such an invalid number exception in our code, we raise that predefined exception. Now we can handle that with the invalid number exception handler or when others than handler. If we don't handle that, we did not handle in here, it is raised to the caller subprogram or platform. It is the SQL developer here. So the SQL developer showed us the returned exception. One last thing for the raise statement. What if we want to raise the exception after handling it? Can we do that? Yes. We can write raise invalid number inside of our exception section too. Let me do that. But first, let me handle the invalid number exception, because we cannot raise a user-defined exception out of its block. So I simply copy that and paste in here. And in here, I write raise and let me paste it. And let's clear up and run the code again. As we can see, even if we handled the error, we raised it anyway. But let me show you something more. What if I delete the exception name? Let me delete it and run. As we can see, it raised anyway. If we write raise statement alone, it raises the current exception again. But the difference is we cannot write raise statement alone inside of begin end block. If we write there, we need to write the exception name too. Great. Now we know how to declare a user-defined exception, how to raise and handle it, and how to raise in other exception types. So this is the end of this lecture. See you in the next one.